Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Madalene Mielke, President and CEO of APAICS, the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies, and welcome to an APAICS conversation celebrating Filipino American History Month and our Filipino American elected leaders. According to the Pew Research Center, as of 2019, 4.2 million Filipinos reside in the United States. This makes Filipinos the third largest Asian origin group, with Indian Americans coming in second and Chinese Americans coming in first. And since representation matters, it's important that Americans see Filipino Americans in public service. So it's my pleasure to introduce our elected leaders for our discussion today. First, Ron Nirenberg. He's the mayor of San Antonio, which has the 7th largest population in the United States and is one of the nation's fastest growing cities. Mayor Nirenberg is the first San Antonio mayor of Asian American descent. Through his personal experiences, the mayor has developed a core commitment to civic participation and the universal values of liberty, justice, and equal opportunity for every person. Our other speaker today is Valderrama, who was first elected to the Maryland House of Delegates in 2006 and currently serves on the Economic Matters Committee, where she chairs the Alcohol Beverages Subcommittee. Delegate Valderrama serves in House leadership as the Deputy Majority Leader to the House of Delegates, and is a former chair and a member of the Maryland Legislative Asian American and Pacific Islander Caucus, as well as a member of the Women Legislators of Maryland. And I like to take a point of personal privilege that I had the great honor of going to high school with her. So I like to say that, we grew up in the same neighborhood. So I'm glad that she's representing parts of where I went to school. So let's get started. I really wanted to get folks to better understand, what motivated you to run for office and why this specific office. I know, Mayor, that you've been in public service for quite a long time, so you didn't get to mayor overnight. So, what motivated you to run for mayor and enter public service?
Sure. Well, thank you, Madalene, and it's great to be with Delegate Valderrama in celebration of Filipino American History Month. The journey to public service is different, I think, for everybody. For me, it was really coming on the foundation of work that I had done at the Nirenberg Public Policy Center for almost a decade at the municipal level, teaching people about how local government works and the importance of and how municipal policy was created, but really settling into my hometown of San Antonio, Texas. I wasn't born here, but my wife and I chose to set our roots here. And when we decided to start a family, I really took a look at the time I was spending during the day and what I wanted to do with the time I was not with my family. And that's when I realized that, what was getting me up in the morning was the opportunities that I had to give back to my community and a desire to make the city that I lived in the best it can be for my son, who was, 1 at the time, when I decided that, maybe I need to explore public service as a career. So during that time when he was, early age, it was a motivation for me to really start to get involved in the affairs of the civic affairs of my city. And that's when I decided to run for city council. And of course, being on the city council, seeing how all the gears turn in city government, when you see things that you want to change, you want to get more involved, you want to, actually start moving the community in the direction that you believe it should go in. And that's when I decided to run for mayor back in 2017. And so it's been my life, and it's been my family's life for the better part of a decade now, if you include city council. So it was a slow process, but once we decided to start a family, I decided this is what I wanted to do with my life.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Delegate Valderrama. What about you?
So Madalene knows this history, not many do, but my father is my predecessor, right? So he got involved in elected politics when I was a younger child. No need for the age, just younger. But he's always been in that realm. And my younger sister and I, we've always been in the background, was always for it, supported it. I think that was pretty rare for our age. We were probably I want to say elementary, middle school, somewhere around there, to be involved in local politics. But in our household, that was just a given and no option, but one that we, honored and was really into, which I thought was kind of odd for our age. But as I ramble on, it was more of support. Never, ever did my sister or I ever think I would follow in those footsteps, ever, because we saw the behind the scenes, how it ran. Now back then, this was a time where people left their front doors open. You could just, walk into anywhere. It's a different time now, which is very unfortunate. So, but we got to meet a lot of people during that time, and I could see myself involved in it, just not being the one doing it. And while I support, the effort and the mission and all of that public service, like I said, I didn't see myself doing it. And then as I got older and was more exposed to it, still didn't see it quite being me, but definitely more active, not just for my father's campaigns or such, but in the whole realm of it. I also have a labor background, a union background, so I believe in that mission as well. And so the two just intertwined. So I was politically involved on the union labor movement as well. So I think my two circles here just intertwined, and had more conversations with my father and others in the Filipino American community here in the DMV who are very active. And it's one of those conversations where you want one of your own to represent, but who would that be? And I have to say, I don't want to say I was anointed by any stretch of the means, but it just kind of, you're your father's daughter and this and that. And I was very hesitant because I know there's a lot of negativity that comes along with nepotism. I don't know why it is when it comes to the political realm. Like if my father were a physician or an attorney or I don't know, something, and I followed in those footsteps, it's like kind of praised and honored and, oh, wow, she's going to be a doctor too. But because I went this path, it was more like, oh, well, she's only doing it because her father was there and she has the name. I go, well, guess what? It is my name. I never changed my name, even when I got married. So, it's my name, proud of it. And so when I finally decided, after numerous conversations of why it would be a good thing, people didn't try to force me, but I did see it made sense. I'm a product of this district, never left. I don't know if that's good, bad, or otherwise. A proud product of the public school system, went to the University of Maryland system school. Like I never left, and I'm raising my family here in the same district that I grew up in. So, wow, when I say it out loud, I feel quite old and I've been here a while, but I still feel useful. So that's important. But that's basically the premise of how my involvement and how it became to be. I will say though, when I decided to run, my only, I guess, weapon, if you could say, is my name. That's it, because I'd never run for office before. I will say there was a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but there was definitely some pushback from those who felt, why am I doing it? Why do you think it should be you? And quite honestly, for those here who are involved in public service and are the electeds, I don't believe I am the anointed one, but I was interested. And I think that is the biggest risk there in of itself, is deciding to do it, right? So I think that, I mean, that's my personal 2 cents. That's my opinion, just putting yourself out there for all the ridicule to be coming back at you, which I definitely get my fair share. Not always, I don't think ever deservingly, but that is what it is. That's what we signed up for. But I still love it. So after you said 16 years, I still can't believe I just ran again. So 4 more years for me, and we'll see what happens after that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And, having grown up with you and having your dad, be a public figure, especially in public service, was so important, I think, to Asian Americans as a whole, to see someone, in state government participating in a way that showed leadership and showed that we belonged. So this leads me into the second part of this conversation is, being Filipino Americans, how has your identity influenced your career in public service? Because a lot of times we talk about how the Asian American community may not be as active, may not be as engaged. And when we see people who look like us in public service and leadership positions, it encourages more of us to vote. So Delegate Valderrama, how has that identity influenced you, and how's it helped you, and how have you navigated that, especially within the Filipino American community?
So let's see. I will try to answer that as best I can. I definitely think my Filipino identity has helped me. Especially, I can only speak for Maryland, right? So having served in Maryland for 16 years, if you can believe this or not, we have an Asian caucus now, but that was only put together. We now 2022. That was only put together, I want to say 2-3 years ago. COVID has really messed up my time frame here, so I can't remember if it was right before COVID or not, but it was around that time. And we're only a 10-member caucus, which says a lot for a state of Maryland with a 6 million population and 188 legislators in the Maryland General Assembly. So, and of the 10, I'm the only Filipino American. There's Chinese, Korean, Indian, Nepalese, one Nepalese, he made history. So having said that, I think my identity speaks volumes, and especially even if we did not have our Asian caucus yet, our leadership, we're under new leadership now as our former leadership passed. But having said that, I made sure as one of 10 to express our stance as AANHPI. The acronym gets longer and longer as I say it, but to know that we may not be the majority, in the state or even in our jurisdictions, but we do have a say, because we tend to get lumped in with, before they had the Hispanic caucus and the Asian caucus, I think we were called the New American Caucus. I think that was a caucus, that was the name that was given. And I remember thinking to myself, why are we called that? I'm not a new American. Yeah, I was like, well, I don't think I'm new. I was born here. So, but I think it was a PC way of trying to include all, right? With the exception of Black Caucus, because Black Caucus has always been in existence. And so I think for me, and that's how I feel like, as far as the legislature is concerned, that we do have a say. We may be small, but we're feisty and we're there to represent. Now, I represent a jurisdiction where it's predominantly African American, as you know, Madalene. It was a lot more diverse when we were growing up, but that's just how it has over the years. But in Montgomery County, they have a very dense Asian population, which I'm very envious of. But that's a whole nother story. So, but as far as Filipino identity in my community, I represent an area in Fort Washington, Maryland, where our Asian population is about 7.5%, right? And in the county itself, we're only, what is it, about 10%, somewhere around there. I probably should get the exact statistic on that. But having said that, I feel like I carry, and I don't say this in a, well, I guess a little bit of obligatory way, but in a proud way as well, as that, as the only Filipina in Maryland right now. But I really I want more Filipinos. I don't want to be the only one. And of course, I'm biased. I push for more women because, women, we don't have enough of us in elected office, especially of color. But having said that, I just feel like I bring like such a proud vision, but not my vision, like our Phil-Am community vision. And I feel like we're not as involved as we should be. And that's why I feel like, I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't come out incorrectly or misconstrued, but I serve because I love it. Like, I still love to do what I'm doing, but I think it's even more important that it shows that there are some of us as Filipino Americans who want to do this job, because it's definitely selfless. It definitely is not a money-making job. None of that. So I think it shows that Filipino Americans are proud, and we have that wantingness and willingness to serve. So I think that makes a huge difference in the way I legislate, in the way that I interact with my colleagues from across, from rural to urban to working class, middle class, upper class, I think it just brings an array. I think it is interesting though how people look at me and they see what they see and perceive me in a different way. And so if I can share a little story, like it's funny and it's not funny. It's when I was a rookie, I first got elected and we had just been sworn in. And one of my colleagues who no longer serves, but he was from the Eastern Shore, from rural Maryland. And I mentioned my father as my predecessor. So we were side by side in the Maryland House, and he starts to have a conversation with me, which I am very chatty, as Madalene knows. I'm friendly. I like to meet people. And he starts by saying, well, Delegate Valderrama, welcome. He goes, I must say, you speak English very well. And then in my head, I started to roll my eyes. I said, here we go. I was like, this will be interesting. And so I'm not making this up. He goes by Dick. His name is Richard. He goes by Dick. And it was all but I could do. And I was like, well, Dick would be because I was born here and raised in my legislative district. I was born in DC. He goes, no way, you were born in the nation's capital. So his talking just did not help. Right. And so this is where I feel like identity is so important, because he looks at me and he sees, I assume he sees an immigrant, which there's nothing wrong with being an immigrant. I did not immigrate here. I was born here. But I think stories like that, why it may seem a little funny, but at the same time, we know that I don't really know what he was thinking, right? I'm not sure if he was trying to be indignant or what have you, but I have to perceive it as just, people just don't know any better, right? So things like that, I think, are important to keep in mind, and always just reminds me of, my identity, not just as an American, but a Filipino American, and why it's so important to serve in whatever level of government or whatever public service it is that you provide.
Thank you. And Mayor Nirenberg, I know that your story has, the relationships that you have with your family about your Filipino identity. I hope you can share that with us.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start by saying I've been a Texan for 42 years. And there's a lot of assumptions about our state. And I'll also note that the Asian American population in Texas is the fastest growing population segment, according to the census. So, but as far as identity goes, my last name is Nirenberg. I am the son of a child of two Eastern European Jews and a mother who was born in Malaysia, whose parents are Filipino and Indian. And so there's a lot of assumptions when I entered office into who I was, what my identity was. And being in the largest Latino majority city in the country, that also brings with it some assumptions about, me running for office. But it was within the Filipino community in San Antonio, small but mighty as they are, that really embraced me as their own and gave me a base to work with. Otherwise, there really wasn't a natural home for me. I don't come from a family of politicians. I don't have a pedigree in this field. So when the Filipino community and the Asian American community at large saw me running for local office, they immediately embraced me as someone who represents them. So in many ways, it's my Asian American heritage, my Filipino identity that gave me a platform to really begin and think about a career in public service. Where does that go from here? I think, as it's been made very clear over the last few years, being loud and proud of your heritage, particularly within the Asian American community, is critical so that we can help many parts of our country normalize the fact that we are here, we contribute, we run businesses, we hold leadership positions, we are your neighbors, we are your friends, and being part of a community that is very small still in San Antonio and in Texas, but is growing, allows me to speak from a place that genuinely represents everybody in my community. You know, San Antonio has been the largest Latino majority city for a long time, but the Hispanic community has been, for all practical purposes, underrepresented in our politic and in our resource planning, allocations, things like that. And we are beginning to work from a base and an intention on equity and restoring equity within our communities. So having an Asian American identity and having that part of my heritage from which I govern from, I think has been very helpful to speak with sincerity and be seen as someone who can do that. So again, I owe a lot to our Filipino community here in San Antonio. And my hope is that I represent them well.
One of the things I wanted to pick up on was that both of you represent areas that don't have majority Asian Americans in the district. And I always encourage Asian American candidates to run for office, even if there are not a majority of Asian Americans in their districts. So what would you recommend in terms of encouraging Asian Americans and the things that you would tell them that they should do to build a reputation so that they can run in places where they feel more confident, where there aren't Asian Americans in the district? So Mayor Nirenberg, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I'm not the first Filipino American on our city council. One of my predecessors years before, African American / Filipino, served on the city council and actually ran for mayor at one point. Great guy. But my message to the Asian American community, especially those who are interested in serving in elected office, is number one, have no fear, because that door has already been opened. That door has been broken down. In fact, we have a Japanese American who may very well become our county judge in San Antonio. So very soon, the largest largest Latino majority city in the country, in the heart of South Texas, may in fact be represented by an Asian American mayor and county judge in the same place. And that's not the only Asian American that's on the ballot at the local level. We have state candidates there as well. So a lot of interesting things happening in terms of breaking ceilings, opening doors for the Asian American community. So your identity, your ethnicity is not a limiter anymore. And don't think that it is. In fact, it's a place of strength. As I mentioned before, it's a relatively small community, but we are tight knit and we help each other. And so if you are interested in representing, if you're interested in advancing the cause of Asian Americans or Filipino Americans specifically, know that there is a group ready to plug in and support you. And it's an opportunity as an Asian American, as a Filipino American now, to make your dreams happen, because there's not many, because of the density of it, and that it's relatively small, but very motivated people and people who are putting their own time and treasure on the line to help other people within their community. It's an opportunity now for you to advance it, as long as it's in the cause of serving your community. So my bottom line advice is just do it. There's no limiters anymore.
Thank you. Delegate Valderrama, I think you said that at one point too, at another panel we had with Asian American women elected leaders. So in your thoughts.
I think I was trying to follow, is it Mielke, however you really pronounce it. And I think that's how I preface, but I was just going to say, I go everything Mayor Nirenberg just said. Can we go with that? No, but in all seriousness, I like you said, I said just do it, but I meant it. Like, I know it's very short and to the point, but as the mayor said, you shouldn't have fear, and doors have been opened. But I think for the Filipino community, and especially now, I didn't immigrate here, as I said earlier, but my parents did. And I know enough about Philippine politics to know that's a big reason why Philams here don't do it. Is because they have the tendency to compare politics here to the politics back in their native home and back in the Philippines, where it's no secret there's a lot of corruption, unfortunately, and on many levels. I've actually seen it when I was there several, I think one of the last presidential elections, not this past one, but not the most current one. And so, you know, the mentality that I experience here, especially in my district, because it's a pretty dense, not just Asian, but dense Filipino community, is, how do I know you're going to, or how do we know that our people are going to do what they say they do? And I keep trying to relay in a way, and it's hard because a lot of this mentality is from our manongs and our manangs, like the elderly generation, which may trickle down, but not so much in our young generation. I have two daughters on my own. They definitely have their own sentiment, their own mind, as most adolescents do, which is a good thing, right? And I'm hoping they're going to take us to a better place, because right now we're in just, I don't even know what to describe her in right now. But I definitely like to encourage Philams to run and to let them know, like, you know, there's the mentality, like, we want one of our own. I don't know if Mayor Nirenberg has experienced this himself, but I know in any realm of whatever career path you take, whether it's politics, medicine, what have you, financial, in our community, and I've been told that it's not just the Filipino American community, but it's the Asian community, but I've only can speak for Filipino Americans. It's like when one of us tends to seek a path and is successful, I'm not saying you're all that, I just meant in reaching your goal, there's what we call the crab mentality. And all of a sudden, all the same people who wanted to encourage you and support you and get you to where you were are one or few the same people who are like tearing you down and saying something behind your back. And it's ridiculous. And I just never understood that mentality, and I never will. And I think that's another reason why Filipino Americans are hesitant. I mean, we come, Madalene, you mentioned that Filipinos were we number one or number two? I think we were number two. You mentioned three. We're number three, but still in the nation. I mean, my God. I mean, we have no one in. Well, okay, I can't say we never had anyone in Congress, but I think another part of the issue with us is that it's, again, no secret that a good majority of Filipino Americans and Filipinos are Republican. I am a Democrat. I don't care what party you are. When I say I try to promote Filipinos to run, I mean, obviously I'm slightly biased. I am a Dem, so I would encourage Dems. But if you're a Republican, I have no problem, right? We need more people to serve in our communities. I mean, people pick a party. That's a whole nother subject. I could go on and on about parties and, you know, what have you. Like, if we could just have an open, like, whatever you are, just run, that would be awesome. But that's a whole nother subject matter. But with the whole, you know, why I think it's important that we represent is because it, you know, I am of a certain age. Again, that's public knowledge, don't need to say it here. I just thought by this time, especially with me and raising my family, that things would be a lot more different as far as representation is concerned. And I don't think we're even close for Filipino Americans. That's my personal opinion. So I feel like I said, I go everything the mayor said, because everything he said was on point. Go ahead.
I want to piggyback on something you're saying, Delegate Valderrama, because I think it's really, really important. The crab mentality, I think that's pretty universal political.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Every community, I think, has experienced that, and I hear that from people in the Latino community, people in the Black community, people in the Asian community. So it's happening, and it's unfortunate. But what you're talking about in terms of Democrat, Republican, Independent, you know, what makes the Asian American community so, I think, attractive in terms of candidates in the politics that we represent, regardless of the political spectrum, is that, you know, the immigrant story is so prominent within our community. And, you know, if you talk to immigrant families or people who are one generation, two generation removed, they understand that, you know, there is a struggle for families. When my parents came here, you know, they had the money in their pocket and the clothes on their back, and they were trying to make a better life for themselves and their families. That's my story and my grandparents when they came over here, both sides. And that is the story of so many other families, particularly within the Phil-Am community and the Asian American community at large. And, you know, Democrats and Republicans, if you're looking at policy through that lens, can make things work. You know, these aren't extreme perspectives to make policy work for families who are trying to make a better life for themselves. That's why I think we have a big opportunity as the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community to make a profound impact on American politics and bring us back together to do the kinds of governing that the vast majority of Americans want us to be doing.
I agree.
You know, we are at the, end of Filipino American History Month. We're coming to a close. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on, what you would want the audience to take away with, what it means to be a public servant and how this is a part of the work that you do and supporting the Filipino American community as well as all communities. So Mayor Nirenberg, I'll start with you.
Well, and again, ditto to what Delegate Valderrama was saying. And I think, to kind of continue in that course of discussion, my advice would be link arms. We're recognizing Filipino American History Month. This was the first time in our nation's history that the President of the United States had a Rose Garden reception in recognition of AANHPI History Month, that we are recognizing at large across the cabinet. Significant members of the highest offices in this country are now occupied by members of the Asian American community. So my advice would be, it is a broad and diverse diaspora within the Asian American community in the United States, particularly as it relates to elected office. And we should celebrate and lift up that diversity. But when it comes to making the strength of our community felt and heard and matter at the ballot box, we should link arms with each other, Republicans and Democrats within the Asian American community, to fight for the causes that we believe in together. And that includes making life better for average families, making it so where an Asian American family who wants to start a business in the middle of Texas is better able to do that. The things that matter to average families is what we should be fighting for, and we should link arms together to fight for those things. There's going to be differences in politics, and there's going to be diversity to celebrate, but we should be united in one voice as much as we possibly can to advance the causes that we all celebrate together.
Okay, Madalene, I'm going to say if I'm ever on another panel with Mayor Nirenberg, I always want to go first. I cannot follow in that. Kudos, Mayor. That was well said. I don't even know what to add except to say that very on point and very, as we're both reflecting and bouncing off each other's commentary, it's like, it really is like when he said link arms, I was already envisioning, now I forgot the name of it, but what happened in the Philippines with when Cory, with the whole revolution that happened up there, and they literally were linking arms. And so I know that sounds a little too, aggressive, whatever, but it's very simply put, is because we're not so well represented. I mean, we're getting there. I mean, we're moving forward. And you mentioned the Rose Garden reception. I think it helps a lot that our VP is of AANHPI descent. So that's a big, plus there.
Very true.
And I'm so happy and proud that she is on that path. Like she is pushing us forward and upward. So that's a great thing. For Filipino Americans, when you said that, as we both said, Republicans, Democrat, whatever your party is, independent, it's so important that we do represent. And I know we talked about a number of things this morning, but I want to reflect again more on the whole serving as a public servant. And I mentioned earlier that just deciding to do it in of itself is already the risk. That is the big risk. I know people are fearful, Philams are fearful, well, putting yourself out there and what if I lose? I know it's easy to say because I haven't, knock on wood, lost, but that's part of the process, right? I mean, just so that we can show that we are there, we do want to represent, we are interested, that I feel like Filipino American Heritage Month is a great beginning. I think we should not wait till October to show our heritage even more. I do think it's just inadvertently, we're always just lumped in with everybody else, right? With Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Nepalese, everybody, which is fine, you know, because we are an HPI, but I think Filipino Americans, especially just our relationship with the US and all of that, the history, as you said, the diaspora of what we are, like, I don't know how to emphasize it more, but to say that we are such proud people and honored people, and people, I always hear complimentary things about Filipinos. Oh, they're so giving, they're so nice, they love to feed you, and you know, all these stereotypical things that they describe as us. But I would like to hear more positive, like, oh, they're great public servants, they serve in this, you know, in this locality, in this, you know, blah blah blah. Now I can say, you know, California is the major exception there, because I believe I think they have the largest Asian Filipino American Daly City, I believe, is the largest Filipino population. So, which I'm happy about, but at the same time, sad about, because when I first met Rob Bonta, who's now the AG there, but when we first met, he was a state I forget what title they use, state representative, state assemblyman, what have you. And he and I conversed, and I was just so shocked at where he came from, California, which is like Little Manila, and he was the first, you know, representative in the legislature, which I found I was so dumbfounded. I was like, you're the first? I was like, wow, that's awesome. But also, what, oh my God, it took this long from a state of, you know, like I said, Little Manila. So experiences like that, when I meet folks and see people, I'm so happy and proud. And at the same time, it takes us so long to get to where we want to be. So as like I said, as the mayor said, link arms. We just need to represent and show that we're more than just 1 month out of 12 months, and that Filipinos are here to rule. Just saying, at some point, not just in Texas and Maryland or California.
Thank you so very much to both the mayor and to the delegate for joining us today. We greatly appreciate all the work that you do in your leadership in supporting and uplifting the Filipino American community, as well as the Asian American community at large, and all of your constituents who you serve. So appreciate all of your time. Thank you to our audience for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. Thanks, everyone.